Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scott Manning coming live from Scott Sports Talk. It is now time for the Scott Manning YouTube College Football Podcast Pregame Show. The only college football pregame show on Friday night here on YouTube. I want to thank all of you guys for being with me here tonight. I want to apologize for the 11:30 start time. We had so much postseason baseball going on here today. And here this evening, we still got the Braves and the Dodgers going on, but that's for another time. But right now, it's time to talk college football. Let's get with the show. Let's get ready to go. Let's have a great time. And I'm going to be with you for about the next 45 minutes or so. And we're going to have a real blast here tonight. But let's start it out with Ohio State. The Ohio State Buckeyes are a 26-point favorite over Indiana tomorrow. That game can be seen at 4 o'clock on Fox. Here's the question. Will Ohio State have a letdown against Indiana after coming off of a big win over Penn State? I hope not. But I will say this. The Ohio State Buckeyes are ready to go. Urban Meyer says he's got his team ready. Dwayne Haskins, he threw for 270 yards last week in their big victory over Penn State. J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber, Benjamin Victor, and K.J. Hill, they all contributed. What can you say about Chase Young? He stepped up for the injured Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa said he won't be back until November. But I'll tell you this. Chase Young has really stepped up to the plate. He's really shown me a lot, and he's really matured here in the last few weeks. I give him all the credit in the world. And Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer said, I feel really good about our team. I really feel good about our chances going forward. Dwayne Haskins is the next big thing. Chase Young, he's really stepped up on defense, and I'm really impressed with him. However, Indiana is no slouch this time. They are 4-1 in the big. They're 4-1 so far in the season. Their only loss was to Michigan State. But keep that in mind. And Urban Meyer even said about Indiana. They said they're a fairly tough football team this year. I'm really impressed with them. And I'll tell you right now, we'll be ready for them. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Indiana Hoosiers this time. And he should. Quarterback Peyton Ramsey's thrown for 1,039 yards for Indiana this season. And running back Stevie Scott has 68 carries for 464 yards this season. Head coach Tom Allen said, I feel pretty good about our chances against Ohio State. We just got to find a way to stop it. If we can get to Chase Young, we can do what we got to do to win. And I'm going to be honest with you. Ohio State versus Indiana, I feel good about this game. The Buckeyes, the Buckeyes are a 26-point favorite. There's something to think about there. If they can hang on, they have a shot. Now let's move on. Enough Ohio State talk because I've got 3 big games on the slate for this Saturday. We're going to start it out 12 noon on Fox on Saturday. Number 19, Texas. Number 7, Oklahoma. The Red River Shootout from the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And then it's the home of the Texas State Fair. Now, the Texas Longhorns got themselves back into the top 25 a couple weeks ago. Now, keep in mind, Oklahoma's had a great season so far. Now, as far as Texas goes, can they make some noise in the Big 12 race? We'll have to wait and see on that. But head coach Tom Herman said, if we can beat Oklahoma, and if we can find somebody who can knock off, if we need to, we can knock off West Virginia, we can really make a race out of it in the Big 12. Lincoln Riley said about Texas, he said, if we can beat the Texas Longhorns and give them 2 losses, we got it made. Because I'm thinking ahead because West Virginia is a very tough football team. And the Mountaineers are a tough team. I'll get to that later. But here are the star guys to watch out for on Saturday in this Red River Shootout on Saturday. Sam Ehlinger, he has 1,185 yards passing this season. Trey Watson, the best running back that Texas has, he has 70 carries for 280 yards this season. The best wide receiver, little Jordan Humphrey, 26 receptions for 402 yards this season. Now, I know the Longhorns have had their struggles, but could they beat Oklahoma at their own game? Only time will tell that. Kyler Murray. Now, here's the guys to watch out for Oklahoma. Kyler Murray, 1,460 yards passing this season. Do you think they still miss Baker Mayfield? Nope. Running back Trey Sermon, 58 carries for 294 yards this season. And the best wide receiver that Oklahoma has, Marquise Brown, 24 receptions, 544 yards this season. Well, I look at it like this. This game is going to be, I got a feeling we're going to be in for a battle on Saturday. Oklahoma is a 5-point favorite, and the over-under is 61. I think it's underdone, personally. I think it should be about at least 75 to 80. Just my personal opinion. But the bottom line is this, and this is my takeaway for this game. Whoever wins this game will be the best team that could stop West Virginia. Because you got to think about this too. Texas is in the middle of this battle. Oklahoma, West Virginia. We do have a 3-team race for the Big 12. There's a lot to think about there. And I'm going to say this now. Whoever wins this game will be the team that could be in the driver's seat to stop the West Virginia Mountaineers and ruin their perfect season. But I'm telling you, this game here is a biggie. And this is a big game, and this is well worth the watching. Because you better believe the West Virginia Mountaineers are going to be watching this game with special interest. And every West Virginia fan and every Big 12 fool and all over the country. And this is going to be the game worth the watching. Now, the next game on my watch list, it's a 3:30 kickoff Saturday tomorrow here on CBS. Number 5 LSU, number 22 Florida. We've seen Florida and LSU before. I've seen some surprises and some upsets. Remember 21 years ago when LSU was ranked Remember 21 years ago when LSU was ranked number 14 and Florida was the number 1 team in the country under Steve Spurrier? Florida went right into Baton Rouge, right into Death Valley. LSU walked all over them, had 5 turnovers. Could it be in reverse? Could it be a reverse next week? Let's think about this for a second. Florida head coach Dan Mullen said, I want to beat LSU at their own game. If we can beat them in Gainesville, we can beat them in the swamp. How sweet it would be. LSU head coach Ed Orgeron said, I feel pretty good about our team's chances. Joe Burrow has really shown me a lot. I remember when we started the season, everybody was thinking, Alabama's going to run away with the SEC West. We're going to be barely lucky to hang out of the top 25. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. LSU has jumped 20 spots since the season started. But let me tell you something. The LSU Tigers have really impressed me. And here's the thing, and here's why. Joe Burrow, the former Ohio State quarterback, 1,023 yards passing this season. He has 6 touchdowns. Running back Nick Morset, 481 yards rushing this season. He has 6 touchdowns himself. Wide receiver Justin Jefferson, 294 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns for him. And also, too, this is a big-time game here. And I'll be mentioning LSU a little bit later in the show. But for right now, let's worry about this battle. Because with Florida, with this game, this is big. And LSU's a pretty good, they're a pretty good, tough football team. But Florida is starting to make a comeback. Quarterback Felipe Franks, he has 961 yards passing and 12 touchdown passes this season. Running back Dameon Pierce, he only has 255 yards rushing and has 2 touchdowns himself. Wide receiver Freddie Swain, 214 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns for his efforts. Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. If Florida upsets LSU, that's going to throw a monkey wrench into everything. But if LSU beats Florida like they should, it's going to be very interesting to see what the LSU Tigers do going forward. Because keep in mind, on November 3rd, LSU has to play Alabama in Death Valley. And there's a lot to think about there too. If Florida upsets LSU, it throws the SEC East it could possibly throw the SEC East into a tailspin. It's going to mess everything up because you got to understand, Florida plays Georgia later on in the season with the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. So there's a lot to think about there going forward. But number 5 LSU, number 22 Florida, this is going to be the game worth watching. There's no doubt in my mind. And that is all there is to it. All right. The last game on my watch list. Number 6 Notre Dame, number 24 Virginia Tech. Notre Dame is undefeated. And if somebody had told me that the Fighting Irish would be undefeated this far into the season, I wouldn't have believed it. Notre Dame is 5-0 for the 3rd time under Brian Kelly. 2 wins over ranked opponents. Very impressive. They knocked off Michigan right out of the gate. They knocked off Stanford. I think Brian Kelly's job is safe now. Because I said before the season started, I had Michigan, Stanford. I originally had Florida State, but I took them off. and I had USC. I said originally lose 2 of those 4 games, Brian Kelly would be out the door. I now think Brian Kelly's job is safe. And that's all there is to it on that. But Brian Kelly said about Virginia Tech, they're a tough football team. And they're probably still smarting over what happened with them a few weeks ago. And I think we're gonna make Virginia Tech pay. And that's all there is to it. Virginia Tech head coach Justin Fuente said, Notre Dame's a tough football team. They are very tough. I'll give them that. They got a great quarterback. They have a great run attack and a great wide receiver, and they got a great defense. But usually it's the defenses that come and win the ball game. Something to think about there. Now, Notre Dame is looking to get into the college football playoff. They're ranked number 6 right now. Virginia Tech they're still trying to get back into this hunt after getting embarrassed by Old Dominion a couple of weeks ago. So there's a lot to think about there. And my thing is, Virginia Tech has not been, yes, they came back to embarrass Duke. I think that was more like the anger talking. They took their frustrations out on Duke after getting embarrassed by Old Dominion. There's a lot to think about there. And I'll tell you right now, the guys on my watch list are very simple. For Notre Dame, Ian Book, 616 yards passing and 7 touchdowns this season. Notre Dame now has a quarterback. Running back Tony Jones Jr., 303 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns this season. Wide receiver Miles Boykin, 311 yards and a touchdown for the season so far. Let me tell you something. Notre Dame may not have a lot of offense, but they got one whale of a defense, and I'm going to say that now. For Virginia Tech, quarterback Josh Jackson, 875 yards, 5 touchdown passes this season. Running back Stephen Peoples, 302 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns himself. Wide receiver Damian Hazelton, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns himself. I'm going to say this now. The matchup in Blacksburg on Saturday night is going to be well worth the money. And let me say this. If you think this season's going to be crazy, there's not going to be much going on right now. But the bottom line is, Notre Dame is still the team to beat, in my opinion. Yes, they got Virginia Tech tomorrow night. That's a tough matchup. They still got to think about Florida State, Syracuse out of the ACC, and then they got to think about USC at the end of the season. So there's still a lot at stake for Notre Dame. If they can get into the college football playoff, it will be a miracle. Because let me tell you something, the Fighting Irish have not been tough, and a lot of people said they haven't been relevant since Lou Holtz left. And to some of those people, I agree. But I'll tell you right now, Notre Dame has always been a tough football team, and that's all there is to it. A little Dr. Pepper. But I will say this about Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. Notre Dame is one of the toughest teams that hasn't won a national championship in a long time. Virginia Tech, they're probably still smarting from getting embarrassed by Old Dominion. We'll see which Virginia Tech team shows up on Saturday night in Blacksburg. Remember 2 years ago when Virginia Tech went to South Bend and Virginia Tech shocked them? It could be Notre Dame that goes into Blacksburg and beats Virginia Tech. Only time will tell that. But the battle for the ACC for Virginia Tech is still alive and well. Notre Dame needs a win for a whole nother reason. They're looking at the college football playoff. And that's all there is to it. And I'll say this. Whoever can win this ball game has shown me a lot. And it's going to be a great season going forward. And what a battle we're going to have tomorrow night. All right. I talked about Ohio State. I talked about the 3 games on the college football watch list for tomorrow. Now, we are now 5 weeks into the college football season. And now I've got the projections of where things could stand as far as the college football playoff games, both playoff games, and the other 4 big bowl games, which is known as the New Year's Six. Now, this is where we stand. According to all the resident experts, this year's the two college football playoff games are going to be the Goodyear Cotton Bowl and the Capital One Orange Bowl. And as it stands right now, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, everybody has Alabama facing Oklahoma. Now, I would pay top dollar for that one. Alabama, Oklahoma. You got Tua Tagovailoa. You got Jalen Hurts. You got the best running backs in the SEC out of Alabama. And, of course, you got Oklahoma. You got Marquise Brown. I've already talked about him. Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray. And Lincoln Riley. They're a great football. And Oklahoma's a great football team. They're undefeated right now. And right now, Nick Saban's already said Oklahoma's a tough football team. And I'm not worried about it right now, but I would love to face Oklahoma somewhere. Because we would give them a battle. And I feel very confident about our chances right now. And as far as the Capital One Orange Bowl, everybody has Ohio State facing Clemson. I'm sorry, I shouldn't do that. I'm kidding around, but everybody at Ohio State knows their history against Clemson. We can't beat them. And the national championship game, are you ready for this? Alabama versus Ohio State. Ohio State's knocked off Alabama before. And Urban Meyer's faced Nick Saban before. And I'll tell you right now, Urban knows Nick Saban's playbook like anybody. Remember his time at Florida? There's something to think about there. But if Ohio State can find some miracle to beat Clemson, I got some swampland in Florida to sell you. And I'm trying to be as fair and objective as possible when it comes to Ohio State and Clemson. But I just can't. Think about it. In three bowl games, the Gator Bowl in '78, Charlie Barman, Art Schlichter threw an interception to Charlie Barman late in the game, and Woody Hayes punched a Clemson player, and he got fired. And then all of a sudden, a little bit later on, back about 2013, 2014, Ohio State had a chance to beat Clemson. They threw it away in the Orange Bowl a few years ago. And the last time Ohio State was in the college football playoff, Clemson they shut us out and humiliated us. Clemson flat out embarrassed Ohio State. I mean, and during that game, I said to myself, and I asked a few of my friends, I said, you got a set of Rose Bowl notes I can look at? Because at that time, Penn State was going to be playing USC in the Rose Bowl on that Monday. And I thought about that too. So as it stands right now, the national championship game would be Alabama-Ohio State. I'm not sure how you folks feel about that, but that's just my take. If that game happens, I will pay top dollar to be there. And there's no doubt in my mind. All right. Now you're wondering about the other four bowl games in the New Year's Six. The other four bowl games are the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. As it stands right now, according to all the resident experts, and I make the assumption on all of them, Rose Bowl would be Penn State and Washington. I would love to see Penn State. I would love to see the Nittany Lions face the Washington Huskies. Here's why. Trace McSorley, one of the best players, one of the best quarterbacks out of the Big Ten, next to Dwayne Haskins. Penn State has a great passing attack. They have Trace McSorley, and they got the best runner in the game, Miles Sanders, and they got the best wide receiver in KJ Hamler. And let me tell you something. He's a great player. Penn State's a great Big Ten football team. Head coach James Franklin said, "We're a tough team. We're tired of being good. We want to be elite." Well, Coach Franklin, you got a ways to go before you can be elite, dude. You blew a 12-point lead against Ohio State at home. There's something you need to think about there. But anyway, for the Washington Huskies, it's very simple. Jake Browning, Myles Gaskin, that's all you need to know. Because the Huskies have a great passing attack, but they also got a great run attack. Because you got Jake Browning, Myles Gaskin, and I'll tell you what, Penn State versus Washington in the Rose Bowl, that would be a perfect matchup. Because you got McSorley and Miles Sanders, and you got Jake Browning, and you got Myles Gaskin. And I'll say this, I would love to see that matchup. I really would. Will it happen? We'll have to wait and see on that. Now, let's move on to another bowl game, the Fiesta Bowl. As it stands right now, 5 weeks into the season, it would be the University of Central Florida against Stanford. Now, Central Florida is a lower conference team, but they're just on the outside looking in as far as the top 10. Stanford got their doors blown off by Notre Dame last Saturday night. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was not himself. Bryce Love had a bad game. K.J. Costello, he had problems against Notre Dame himself last Saturday night. So Stanford may have just knocked themselves right out of a chance of being in the Rose Bowl. And the Pac-12 is going to be a very interesting race to see what happens from there. And also, too, the next game, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. As it stands right now, and I'm on the fence on this one about one of the teams, and I'll explain why. They have it LSU versus Notre Dame. I'm on the fence with that. Now I agree on LSU. I agree with them on LSU. I'm with them on that 100%. The one team I'm on the fence about is Notre Dame. Here's why. I think Notre Dame will be in the college football playoff if they win out. And let's think about this. Notre Dame is one of the best teams in the country. They got Ian Book. They replaced Brandon Wimbush and got Ian Book. They've got a quarterback now. Yes, I know Miles Boykin. He's one of the best players in the game right now for Notre Dame. But LSU, I agree with them on LSU because you got Joe Burrow, Nick Brissett, Justin Jefferson. I would be a great matchup. I would love to see Notre Dame. LSU, I'm with them on. Notre Dame, I'm a little bit on the fence. And that's why. I do believe Notre Dame will go undefeated. Will their strength of schedule hurt them in the end? Only time will tell that. Now they're independent and they don't have to they don't have to worry about winning a conference title. Now I know this is only 5 weeks out, but that's just the feeling I have. I agree with I'm on board with LSU, but I'm on the fence with Notre Dame playing in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And now last, but certainly not least, the Sugar Bowl. And I agree with this all the way. Georgia versus West Virginia. What a matchup that would be. Jake Fromm versus Will Grier. The high flyer of the SEC versus the high flyer of the Big 12. You know the SEC and the Big 12 are known for the Big 12 is known for the home run touchdown pass. But the SEC can do it pretty well too. Jake Fromm's really showed me something. He's a great player at the University of Georgia, and I'm going to tell you right now, he's a great quarterback. Georgia coach Kirby Smart has said, he's the best thing I got going right now. And he's one of the best of the best. I would take Jake Fromm any day of the week, man. That's all because he's just chopping wood, man. Just a chopping. I know I shouldn't act like that, but that's just the way I am. And for West Virginia, think about it. Will Grier, he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. He could possibly do something about that this season. Now West Virginia could possibly get into the college football playoff. But here's the deal. For them to do that, they're going to need some help. They need Texas to upset Oklahoma, and West Virginia's got to win out. If all that can happen, if they can get some help along the way, they're in. But West Virginia head coach Dan Holgrensen has already said, I'm not worried about anything right now. We're just taking one game at a time. Whatever happens, happens, and wherever the chips fall, they fall. I mean, head coach, I give Coach Holgrensen some credit. He's not worried about the college football playoff at the moment. He's taking it one game at a time because he knows he's got Texas in a few weeks and he's got Oklahoma to close out the season on November 24th. So there's something to think about there. And I'll say this. The Sugar Bowl, Georgia, West Virginia, I am on board. I agree with that. It would be Jake Fromm versus Will Grier, and I would pay top dollar to see that. And that is all there is to it. All right, now we got 4 games Now, I want to review September real quick because we're 5 weeks into the season. All the college football playoff stuff and the New Year's Six Bowls, there were 4 games in the month of September that will influence the committee. That did influence the committee. Now, might influence, let me back up. There are 4 games that will influence the committee. The number 1 game on the list, Ohio State, Penn State. That 27-26 victory for Ohio State when they had to come from behind and win it, that may have influenced the committee. Dwayne Haskins showed up at the right time. And Chase Young, he stepped up big time for the Ohio State defense in the absence of Nick Bosa. KJ Hill, he came through. J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber. I'll give head coach Urban Meyer credit. He said coach, he had his team ready to go on the road to Penn State in the whiteout. They sent everybody home. Happy Valley turned into Haskins Valley. But let me tell you something. This game may have influenced the committee because the committee's going to take a look at this battle between Ohio State and Penn State. This was the toughest test for the Buckeyes this season, and they passed it with flying colors. Yes, they had to come from behind. Yes, they struggled for most of the game. But the problem is the defense gave up some big plays. If they didn't give up any of those big plays, Ohio State has an easier time with it. But everybody knew that game was going to be very tough for Ohio State. If they would have lost to Penn State, Ohio State would have been done. And Penn State, that loss really hurt their chances. They still can get in, but they're going to need a lot of help along the way. They will need, and I hate to say this, they will need Ohio State to lose somewhere for Penn State to have any chances. Ohio State would have to lose 2 games. Penn State went out, they could possibly get in. That's the way it just stands. That's where we stand right now. Now, the next game that will influence the committee, Notre Dame Stanford. Notre Dame blowing Stanford's doors off 38-17. Ian Book had the game of his life last week. And you know, that was a big victory. Now, Notre Dame does play Virginia Tech on Saturday night, like I said. Ian Book showed up. Miles Boykin showed up. Tony Jones Jr. had a whale of a game. Stanford was all lost off in La La Land. Now, I think that game will be an influence to the committee. Number 3, let's go back to earlier in the month of September. Clemson, Texas A&M. Remember back when Clemson went with Kelly Lawrence to be their starting quarterback? He went out, and all of a sudden somebody else transferred. Clemson barely almost gave that game away. That's all there is to it on that one. And number 4, go back to the opening weekend. Washington, Auburn. Auburn's 21-16 victory over the Washington Huskies in the opening game of the season in Atlanta. That was a big one. Jarrett Stidham stepped up. And I said Auburn's got a tough defense. That was huge too. Myles Gaskin and Jake Browning had some struggles along the way in that ball game. So that's another game that the committee is going to be looking at to see where the chips fall. They fall, and whatever happens in the month of September will stay in September. Now, you thought the month of September was crazy? We have 4 games. 4 games. And we have the four games that are the 4 biggest matchups in the month of October. We're done with September. Now we move to October. And I'll tell you right now, there are 4 games on everybody's watch list that's got everybody interested. The first game, Georgia LSU, next Saturday on October 13th. That's a biggie. If Georgia takes care of Vanderbilt like they should, and if LSU beats Florida in the swamp tomorrow, we could possibly have a 2-5 or a 2-4 on Saturday. Possibly next Saturday afternoon or next Saturday night. There's a lot to think about there. Georgia LSU, what a matchup that would be. Jake Fromm versus Joe Burrow. And that game is going to be in Baton Rouge in Death Valley. And I'll tell you right now, LSU has really shown me a lot since the start of the season. When they knocked off their number 8 Miami, they're ranked number 25. They're now in the top 5. Joe Burrow, coming from Ohio State going to LSU, may have been the blessing that the LSU Tigers and Ed Origin needed. Because I got a strange feeling this game is going to be crazy. And you know LSU, they're going to play Georgia tough. And I'll tell you right, and also too, think about this. If LSU upsets Georgia, and if LSU wins out, and think about this. November 3rd in Death Valley, LSU versus Alabama. There's a lot to think about there too. I know I'm jumping ahead, but we need to be thinking of it's now. We need to start thinking about these matchups, folks. It's going to get serious, and that's all there is to it. Georgia versus LSU, October 13th, with a lot at stake. This is literally going to be a high-stakes poker game. And this could be the SEC heavy. This has got heavyweight championship fight written all over it if everything pans out correctly. So keep that in mind. Number 2, Texas versus Oklahoma. We have a battle for the Big 12, and West Virginia is in the middle of it. Now, West Virginia has to play Texas sometime either this month, I think either this month or somewhere in November. But I know for sure Oklahoma plays West Virginia on November 24th on a Friday night to close the season. If both Oklahoma and West Virginia are both undefeated going into that battle on November 24th, the Big 12 championship could be decided in Norman. And I'll tell you right now, as of this moment, we honestly do have a 3-team race for the Big 12 title. Texas, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. You got to think, we need to be thinking, we've thought about all about Texas, Oklahoma tomorrow. That is a biggie. If Texas upsets Oklahoma, West Virginia will be in sole possession of first place in the Big 12. If Oklahoma beats Texas, we got a 2-team race on our hands. And all it boils down to, if both Oklahoma and West Virginia are both undefeated going into that matchup on November 24th, we're going to have a battle for the Big 12 title. And it's going to come down to who wants it the most. But as far as Texas goes, watch for Sam Ehlinger versus Kyler Murray. And you know Marquise Brown and little Jordan Humphrey, that's going to be interesting too. Whoever wins tomorrow's matchup between Texas and Oklahoma is really going to be in the driver's seat. Number 3, Wisconsin versus Michigan. That game is next Saturday on October 13th. Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor and Alex Hornibrook, are they still smarting from that loss to BYU? They've really recovered since getting embarrassed at the hands of BYU up at Camp Randall a few weeks back. Now Michigan has one loss to Notre Dame. Whoever loses this game is going to be out of the national title race nationally. If Alex Hornibrook is average against Michigan, they might win the Big Ten West and that's it. But if Alex Hornibrook and Jonathan Taylor both show up against Michigan on October 13th, that's going to be big. And you know Wisconsin, they've really rebounded nicely. Now Michigan, last Saturday, they had to come from behind to beat Northwestern. Shea Patterson was not himself. And that's all there is to it. And you know that game, Wisconsin and Michigan, if Michigan loses, they're out of it nationally. If Wisconsin loses it, they're only going to be good enough to win the Big Ten West, and that's it. Their shot of the national title is going to be gone. So this game on October 13th is a must-win for both Wisconsin and Michigan. And that's all there is to it. Number 4 on the watch list for October. October 20th, Michigan State. The battle of the state up north. Here's what's going on. You know about Michigan and Northwestern. And you know Michigan plays Michigan State. Remember at the start of the season when I said Jim Harbaugh, if he loses to Notre Dame, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Ohio State, 3 of those 5 games, he's out the door. He's already got 1 strike against him, and that's Notre Dame. Lose to Michigan State, strike 2. Lose to Ohio State, strike 3, you're out, you're fired. As far as I'm said it again, Harbaugh's job is on the line. He's coaching for his job, and he knows it. He's already got 1 strike against him. Don't lose to Michigan State. Don't lose to Ohio State, or he's out the door. And a lot of people have agreed with me on this. And that's all there is to it. So Michigan State and Michigan State's trying to get some relevance. They're trying to get back in. Head coach Mark D'Antonio has said, we got embarrassed. We weren't ourselves. We're back in the top 25. Hopefully we can give Michigan a chance at it. But we got a couple of games to go before we get there. We'll have to wait and see what happens down the road. All right. Those are the 4 big games that I've talked about. There are 4 lessons in the month of September we've learned. Alabama is the undisputed SEC heavyweight. No kidding. Tua Tagovailoa and the Alabama defense, they're number 1 in the country, and they've earned it. Number 2, Ohio State is the leader of the Big Ten. That's a big one right there, and I'm really on board with that. And think about it. Look what Ohio State has done. No Nick Bosa. Chase Young has really stepped up, and he's really shown me a lot. And I'll tell you right now, and Dwayne Haskins, in his first 4 games, he threw for over 300 yards. The only game he did not throw for 300 was the last Saturday against Penn State, and he threw for 270. And I'll tell you right now, Ohio State has proven to me that, and Ohio State is the leader of the Big Ten. No doubt about it. Because right now, the rest of the conference, the Big Ten East is a little weak right now. And Ohio, with the exception of Penn State. And Penn State, I'll give them credit. Penn State is still, in my opinion, going to be a top 10 football team. But are they going to get back into the national championship picture? They're going to need some help. But I will say this. Ohio State is the leader of the Big Ten. No question about it. The Big Ten East is strong. The Big Ten West is just weak. Think about it. Wisconsin won lost. They got embarrassed at the hands of BYU. Minnesota, Indiana, Illinois, all weak. Nebraska, I don't even want to go there. Number 3, Notre Dame has a quarterback. They sure do. Well, after the second week of the season, when Brandon Wimbush had a bad game, and I applaud Brian Kelly for this. Brian Kelly made the smart move going with Ian Book as being the starter against Wake Forest. After 2 squeak-by victories over Ball State, I don't remember who Ball State. I know they barely escaped over Ball State and Vanderbilt. After 2 squeak-by victories, Brian Kelly decided to go with Ian Book. And he just destroyed Wake Forest, and he made the Stanford game look so easy. So yes, Notre Dame is a quarterback. Has a quarterback now. Ian Book is the best thing that has come through since Joe Montana. And I know it's way, way, way back in the 70s, but hey, need I say more? And that's all there is to it on that one. Number 4. The Pac-12 will have a one-loss conference champion. Well, the Pac-12 does have one team left undefeated, the Colorado Buffaloes. If Colorado goes undefeated and defies all the odds, they will have earned my respect, and if they win the Pac-12 championship, they will literally earn it. Because I'll tell you right now, if Colorado defies all the odds, if they do it, I'll be shocked. But the Pac-12 will have a one-loss conference champion. I will agree with that because I don't think Colorado's they're not very strong. But I will say this though about the Colorado Buffaloes, they're a great football team, and I think everybody's taking them lightly. Well, let's see what happens if they have to play USC, Stanford, or Washington. We'll wait and see what happens there. But I will say this. If the Colorado Buffaloes do defy all the odds, they will earn my respect all the way. That's all there is to it on that one. Now, despite all of this, and despite all of the projections, and all the tough games, and all the lessons we've learned, there are still 4 remaining questions. Number 1, can undefeated LSU keep it up? Can they stay undefeated? And you know what? I'm going to do the thumbs up, thumbs down segment. Well, I won't be able to do it with one, but well, there's one. I'm going to do the number 2 first. Number 2, Washington, Stanford, who you got? Who do you think is going to win the Pac-12 now? I'm going to go with the Washington Huskies because right now Stanford's having trouble. I'm going to go with the Huskies because they got Myles Gaskin, they got Jake Browning, they got the best. They're the better team right now out of the Pac-12. That's all there is to it at the moment. So there you have it. My pick for the Pac-12 now is going to be the Washington Huskies. And that's all there is to it on that one. And now, for the other three questions, let's do the, I'm going to do the up-down segment. Let's do an up-down. Here's how it works. Either, I'll ask the question, either you vote up or you vote down. It's very simple. It's a very fun game. We're only going to do it for three questions, but just to kind of give you a sample of what I'm going to be doing. All right. Number one, can undefeated LSU keep it up? I am going to vote down. Here's why. LSU's got to play Alabama yet. Tua Tagovailoa is a very tough quarterback. Yes, Joe Burrow has really impressed me at his time at LSU. Yes, he has. But I will say this. I think Alabama's the better team. I really do. But no disrespect to the LSU Tigers and what they've done so far. But when you're facing the number one team in the country, and unless anything happens to Alabama, I think Alabama's going to win the SEC West again. I'm sorry, Tiger fans, to disappoint you on that. But But the bottom line is, Alabama's just a very tough football team, and that's all there is to it. Next question: can Clemson lose? Now you know their star quarterback Kelly Lawrence is out with a concussion, and one of their former quarterbacks transferred out, and they got to go with the backup quarterback named Chase Bryant. And Clemson's schedule is not going to be fair. It's not going to be too easy the rest of the way. So, do you vote up or do you vote down? Can Clemson lose? I'm going to vote up, and here's why. Right now, their quarterback's out with a concussion after getting hurt against Syracuse last Saturday. Kelly Lawrence only threw for only maybe 81 yards, and Chase Bryant wasn't much better. It was the run game that led the comeback over Syracuse last Saturday. I haven't forgot about that game. And yes, Texas A&M exploited Clemson when they lost 28-26 earlier in the year. So I think Clemson can lose. I really do. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize, but I think I might be right on this one. So I'm going to vote up on can Clemson lose. I'm going to vote up. The last question. Can West Virginia challenge Oklahoma for the Big 12? To that one, I am going to vote up. And here's why. Will Grier is going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate. He's one of the best quarterbacks out of the Big 12. He's thrown for over 1,300 yards so far this season. And yes, I know. And let me go back here. Yes, I know. And yes, I know. Kyler Murray is a very tough quarterback. He's thrown for over 1,400 yards this season. But I think Will Grier could challenge Kyler Murray any day of the week. And yes, I do believe West Virginia can challenge Oklahoma for the Big 12. And I've said it before. On November 24th, if both West Virginia and Oklahoma are undefeated going into that Friday night battle after Thanksgiving, it's going to be a battle, ladies and gentlemen, for the Big 12 title. And that's all there is to it. So once again, I'm voting up that West Virginia will challenge Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for my closing thoughts on this night. And I'm going to keep it simple. It is time to get serious now. The first 5 weeks we've had non-conference battles. We've had fun along the way. It's now time to get serious. We're to the midway point of the college football season. Penn State's lost a game. Clemson's nearly lost 2 of them. Ohio State had to come from behind to beat Penn State last Saturday. Alabama's still the best of the best. Not just in the SEC, but in the country. Now we're into the meat of conference play. And I'm going to tell you this now. Ohio State passed their toughest test against Penn State. Now we got 4 games that should be fairly easy until we get to our battle against Michigan State. But on October 27th, I do believe. But I will say this. It's time to get serious now. And I'll tell you why. Alabama's got to face LSU on November 3rd. That's going to be a tough battle. LSU's already knocked off Auburn. If they knock off Alabama, it changes the SEC West is going to be really thrown into a tailspin. And I grant you LSU is undefeated. But Alabama is a very tough football team. And as far as the Big Ten goes, Ohio State is the leader of the pack, despite no Nick Bosa. And Chase Young has really stepped up, and he's shown me a lot. However, it is still very, very much time. We need to be thinking about getting serious, because if we get ahead of ourselves, something's crazy is going to happen. Something crazy almost did happen. Syracuse almost knocked off Clemson on the road. And if their star quarterback out hurt, it could change the battle for the ACC. And we got some teams that could challenge. Notre Dame realizes it's time to get serious. They've been serious since the season started, when they knocked off Michigan, and when Notre Dame came out of nowhere to knock off Stanford. I will say this: the fun time is over. Now it's time that we get serious, and with everything on the line, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens the rest of the way. But the battle for the national championship is really getting started. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here tonight. I apologize for the 11:30 start time, but due to postseason baseball, I decided to get most of the postseason baseball out of the way. And I decided to back up my college football show to 11:30. I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here tonight. I will be back tomorrow night at about 11:30 or midnight for the Scott Manning College Football for the Scott Manning College Football Wrap-Up Show. I want to thank you guys for the post-game show, and I want to thank you guys for being with me. And you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for being with me, and God bless. And I will see you tomorrow night at 11:30. I will see you tomorrow between 11:30 or midnight for the college football post-game show, where we're going to wrap up the Saturday in college football and look ahead to next week. Thank you guys so much for being with me. You guys have a great night. I'm going to bed. Good night, everybody, and God bless.